guys are assholes, women are bitches. Maybe it's you. maybe it's you, and then maybe you can get better if you fix what's going on.
Buckle up, bitches. This is gonna get bumpy. This is the breakup diet.
This week, I have Johnny Cassell on, who's a dating coach and relationship expert. He's spent over 20 years helping people find confidence and navigate the world of dating. He's also the best-selling author of a book called Elite Seduction and the star in a documentary, Find Love in 7 Days, inside the world's #1 dating school. During our chat, we talked about all things to do with confidence, rejection, and dating after heartbreak. And without further ado, welcome to the Breakup Diet. Johnny Cassell, elite dating and men's lifestyle strategist. You're going to have to tell me what that means because I have no idea. I mean, a little bit of an idea, but I need more details.
Well, I guess coming on to 20 years now, I've been helping men overcome their issues with understanding the other, in a romantic life, their dating life. And with that, what I sort of understood was it's two parts, right? It's a skill part. And there's also your environment. And a lot of guys just haven't got the environment sorted out or really understand their positioning in the market. You're from marketing. You understand that if you've got a great product, but it's not on the right high street or it's not in the right rooms, then it's not going to reach its target market. So we need to start looking at our dating life a bit like that.
I've never thought of dating like that, but I like it.
Yeah. So, and that's where I get my rocks off really, because it's that you can have a lot of fun with, especially if someone's got some resources to play with. You can create the rooms, you can allocate a positioning, and I think it's so overlooked.
So what does that mean? So somebody would come to you that might be struggling with getting dates or struggling like in their relationship, like doesn't matter either or is it, you
got a guy, I could take a phone call yesterday, right? The guy's like in like the hillbilly middle of nowhere. He's complaining about he's not meeting anyone. And he's thinking of it as a situation where it's what he's saying, what he's doing. It's like, well, you need to be in a place where you have volume and you need to be in a place where the candidates are qualified, not just from an app or not from the Red Lion down the road because it's convenient. And people sort of unconsciously, just keep this loop going, and they, a decade's gone by when really they had to sort out their positioning, they had to sort out their community. And a lot of people think they have this dating problem, but really it's that. They have a community and a positioning problem. So if you fix that, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't work out one person because you've already got the foundation sorted, you've got the bedrock sorted out. We're constantly dealing with people that are on apps. And first we have to ask yourself, why am I on an app? Why am I seeing that as a viable pathway to meeting someone? Again, what shows up is I don't have community. That's why I'm seeing that as a choice. So it's get your social life sorted out, get your positioning sorted out, and the dating will be the byproduct.
And I'm thinking about it as like a woman being on an app. As in my surroundings, I live in London, so it should be quite good. But I'm on apps because I feel like everybody is on apps. So if I'm not on an app, I feel like I've put myself at a disadvantage in the dating scene.
I think the disadvantage is being on there because I think that what happens is with the apps, if you think of like a network, like what a network is, it's many nodes connected to each other. And traditionally people used to date people in like the village. There was a small amount of nodes to play around with. And now we have a layer of like the digital space. There's more nodes connected than ever. So what we come to realize, we have this huge paradox of choice. So we actually never really make a decision. And we know it's pretty much stacked against you. I mean, men, I'd say anyway. I mean, the figures that have come out, I mean, it's like 20% of people find success on dating apps. And those people are likely to understand how to sell an image, right? What needs to be shown for the female or the male gaze. A lot of people don't come from that understanding or background, so therefore then it's never really going to work for them. Or they're going to be monetized through the roof of whatever the new gimmick is, sending the rose or whatever the thing is, When really, if you possess the tools, there's an opportunity every day as soon as you leave your house. You just need context. Could be picking up a coffee. It could be where you have that brunch or you take that meeting. A lot of people at home taking meetings on Zoom now. Well, I know it's convenient because you can stack them, but you could have that meeting at a hotel lobby, and then between meetings, there might be someone a bit curious over there and you can give a little flicker of the eye or, and something might be able to happen.
Okay, so with that, like meeting somebody organically, or as everybody's calling it, IRL at the moment, that's good. But I do feel like nowadays men aren't doing that as much as they used to because of like all the social media, because of the apps, because of they don't need to, because there's so many options. Like, how do we get people to actually do that again?
Well, I think yes, and why are they not doing it? Well, the and bit is the other things that have happened in society, again, in the last decade. I always say this whenever, these sort of questions come up, but Me Too campaign, again, like it was an important awareness campaign, and the fallout of that was the men that perhaps were giving it a go were really second guessing, like, well, is this okay? I've been told it's harassment now. And of course, there was lack of context in what was acceptable and what was not. And what we learn is, the continued pursuit of an unwanted interaction is harassment. Not saying to, giving someone a compliment on the street or you're at the bar or whatever. The frustrating thing is for women that every day they're looking for a romantic experience and men are bottling it up because they feel like there's a social fallout or consequence to it. So that was something that's happened. The normalization of the dating apps. I say this all the time, like I find it funny because, in the inception of online dating, I remember platforms such as like Plenty of Fish or, it was MSN Messenger, like chat windows. And it was a bit weird. It was like you weren't really telling your friends you're on them. But wow, it's just like, it's just so normal now. I don't completely discredit them. They are a pathway. I just think where people will be in trouble if they substitute them for a social life. And that's what's starting to get lost when you start to see the dissolvement of traditional high street bars, Parliament, Stackham High sort of places that really that's where you learn your stripes. Being a bit rusty, giving it a go, taking a risk, position yourself next to the guy and maybe he'll approach you, all this kind of nonsense. Like, that's how you learn. And nightlife is getting a lot more curated as well. I mean, WhatsApp groups really matter now. These like Partiful apps and stuff like that.
Partiful for like parties and stuff. Yeah.
Like this is, if you're not on a list, you're not really getting into the events where the people you'd like to meet are. So then you're on a sort of, the fringe of what's really going on. Again, really backs up the point of who and what rooms matter.
So how are you going to help people with all these situations now with your agency? So you're getting them out to talk to people more in person. But for example, take the person that was living in the middle of nowhere. What's something that you would suggest that he does straight away? If he's very comfortable in his, village or wherever he is, like, how do you get that man who's like obviously done that for a while out of his comfort zone?
So initial conversation is like, what are your interests? And I just try to work out what could initially be the more social version of that, right? So that, just to simplify, let's just say you're a jogger. You just go for a jog in a park on your own. There's a lot of hype and talk around like running clubs and stuff like that. Sure, well, that's an obvious, more social version of something you already enjoy. Consider that and give that a go. And let's just pull it out. Like you perhaps might be doing too much male dominant activity. Some of my clients that are new to my work, I just find it that we just start working with each other. I check out their Instagram stories and what they're posting and what they're signaling and stuff like that. It's just like you're at a football game or, you're at you're coming to me saying you're not meeting women, but all your social activity is just like with the lads. Well, what do you expect? Is it, yeah, but it's the Arsenal game. Who cares? Like, who cares? I mean, like, this is your time. You're not getting a good return on your time, right? So think about being in environments where the ratio is in your favor. That's advice for men and women. Yeah, I went to this like car concourse the other year, and all the classic cars and stuff like that. It's full of affluent men. Now, and of a handful of select smart women that are positioning themselves, you know, like, and then they like the car. Do you know what I mean? Just to get the conversation going. Like, you got to start thinking like an Essex girl. Essex girl's going to come in from the train and put herself in like, what is that Market Square over by Liverpool Street, to increase the chances of meeting someone. You know, you've got to think like an Essex girl.
The Ned, everybody goes to the Ned, yeah, to meet the finance bros. So,
yeah. There are some really good pubs that you could go to. The guys are watching the rugby match, you know. So if you're a woman, go to those pubs.
Yeah.
You know?
You do make it sound simple, but people aren't doing it.
I know, it's uncommon sense. You know, it's things like so obvious. We're just making it so difficult. Let's go old school. That's how it always was, you know? And, you know, where guys are really struggling is they are not having stimulating conversations with women.
So that's one of the challenges that people keep coming to you for, that they feel like they're not.
For sure. I mean, the app might land them a date. You know, they've been able to pull the facade off, you know, through the messaging. But if you're not getting the opportunity to see someone a second time, well, it's quite clear that there was a lack of stimulation. And I believe you can have chemistry with anyone. I feel so when you are curious enough to want to know about the other, because we have to remind ourselves we've all lived a life. Sometimes we're so wrapped up in our head, you're not present. You got to be present, and when you're present, you're listening. You're actually actively listening rather than passively listening, trying to think of the best thing to say. When really, everyone's favorite subject is themselves. So if you can make the subject about someone else, that's normally not what happens. You know, everyone sits there talking about themselves because they're overcompensating that they can't stimulate, and hoping that telling them about your boat or telling them how much you're worth is enough to get it across the line. And really, it's just a bit cringe.
Very cringe.
Yeah.
What made you want to firstly start helping men with like confidence and dating and all of that?
It's been an interesting journey, like answering that question, because years ago, I would have gone around and told you that, you know, I picked up a book and I was like, wow, yeah, this speaks to me. Why does it speak to me? Because I went to an all-boys school. So I had a lack of opportunity with mixing of girls at a young age. And then I started to realize, like, oh, I actually had a really bad experience in the younger periods of my life, you know, at 6 or 7, getting bullied by girls and like coming home with bruises all over my legs, like physically abused. Forgot about it, completely forgot about it until I started reading more about psychology. And that comes to say, I was like, whoa, that makes sense. So there's obviously been some psychological schema attached to interaction with girls. My mind is saying it's not safe. So that's why there was resistance to me seeing a girl out in the wild, and just being like, what's the, I don't understand. What's going on here? I couldn't make any sense of it. It became a need for myself, that whole journey, in terms of like getting over that stumbling block and actually having interactions. Started to see a difference in interactions, started to see my friends coming out of relationships and confidence just absolutely disappearing. So I reluctantly started to share what I was learning to them because I wanted to get all the girls at the beginning. But I was like, wow, there's a lot of joy in this. There's a lot of joy in helping people. You know, seeing someone completely find new belief in themselves again. I was like, maybe this is what I do. And then I came to London and started working for a company there for 5 years, and then on the side, my stuff was growing, and then I, you know, built my own company. What I realized is, and this is a lot of my recent work and what I'm writing about now, I haven't released much of this yet, but how we all operate out of ancestral wounds. And what was really interesting for me is to explore the only sort of grandfather in my life left now, but he was absent for like over 28 years in the family. And there's a lot of things in my family I couldn't really make sense of. My mum, for example, like, you know, she always suffers from social anxiety. I was told that when she was at school, she had mutism, a cousin that's got mutism. There's all this sort of like social novelties, so to speak, within the family. I was like, why? So there was things growing up where I see my mum, you know, very quiet, you know, not much of a social life, I'm absorbing this subconsciously. And that's why these sort of things started to speak to me later on in life as an interest. It's like you can subdue yourself to just be another person in that lineage, or you could go into, you could struggle to pick up the phone for 28 years, or you could go into a room and completely flip it upside down and speak to everyone. And we know that if you've got like a father that's like an alcoholic, you're either going to be the alcoholic or you're going to be the fitness freak. So that sort of stuff's very interesting for me right now, because it's stuff that's like, it's invisible to you, but it's guiding your life choices.
So when you were going out there and like dating and stuff again, do you think a massive thing that helped you was rejection therapy?
Yeah, and I'm very careful of language. I don't really call it rejection, and I call it it's exposure therapy. And if something doesn't work out, then it just means the values weren't in alignment, and that's absolutely okay. The discovery of two people is about value alignment rather than rejection. Was down the driving range the other day with a colleague of mine. Not something I do often, and I don't know how to play golf. I don't know how to swing or anything like that. In the first couple of swings, I don't know what I'm doing. It's banging on the ceiling. It's even nearly hitting me in the face. It's a bit embarrassing, But every swing, I'm asking questions, and I'm refining what I'm doing. I'm changing the grip. I'm changing the posture, and surely but slowly, the ball's getting a bit more straight. And you've just got to be like that with anything you want to improve. You just got to be curious enough to get better. But I had 100 balls to play with. If you've only spoke to 3 people, then you've only got 3 data points to look at. Every time there's an experience, you've got to look at it and think, what have I learned? What can I do better? Rather than just be blind to it, and meet 100 guys on an app, 100 women on an app, and then you're just repeating the same pattern, not fixing anything, just sitting in victimhood, blaming it someone else. Guys are assholes, women are bitches. Maybe it's you. maybe it's you, and then maybe you can get better if you fix what's going on.
So for somebody that like maybe is going through a breakup, making themselves feel a bit like a victim, what would you suggest that they do? Yeah,
the first chapter of my book is like taking responsibility. No matter where you are, what's happened, it's so easy to go, my ex was an arsehole, my ex was crazy. There's a reason why things end up going the way they go. You might have lost respect, which probably means you didn't set boundaries, or you look past like some things you shouldn't have looked past. Then people just end up taking the piss. And I would say, be grateful of the experience first of all. Again, it's in the game of removing negativity to it. I don't care if they cheated on you or whatever. Be realistic. You did have a great time with that person until the thing happened. So sit in the pocket with that. And then it's just go, okay, what can I do better? Is there a pattern of me being in these abusive relationships? Why is that? It's not all men are abusive. That might have been the first relationship that man was abusive in. But it's been 3 consecutive relationships that you've accepted abuse. Now that becomes something. When you start to realize that, I go, oh, actually, I saw a little bit. We all test each other in relationships, and if you don't step up and push back, then one starts to realize they can go a bit further. They can go further. And I'm speaking of this example because I have a female client that has been through this, and I had to make her aware of it. And the deeper ancestral thing was that her mother was abusive to her. So the men that she was attracting, there was a very nuanced behavior at the beginning that she identified that was familiar to her. But just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's great for partnership. It's just familiar. You have to ask yourself, why am I responding to this? It's because of that. These aren't the values that make a healthy relationship. That can happen when you sit in responsibility.
Beyond like physical, what do you think are the main points that like make somebody attractive?
Well, one we touched on there is boundaries. It's so unattractive being the people pleaser. They forget that their views and their opinions matter. Actually, probably scared to actually speak up for themselves out of fear of losing the other. So other things beyond looks that are attractive, ambition, future planning, success. Signaling value. Signaling status, because if you can signal status, then you're signaling safety. I think guys sometimes are a bit goes over their head, like how important safety is for women.
Isn't it like women are safety, security, and something else that they most like a lot of the time look for?
100%. Like it's like, think of it, if you've got a daughter, right? You're a father. What's the one thing you think you're preparing her for the world? It's to pick a guy that's going to make her feel safe. Pick a guy that's stable. Like that's the conversation he's having with his daughter. The mum's having with the daughter. So that's you. You know, none of this. Always me. It's picking up the bill, and it's your job. You know, like these women have been prepared for the world for this. That's the conversation they're having. So just get that in your head.
Do you think that there's different things that women find more attractive than men?
Men are more drawn to beauty, right? And this is the big conversation in society at the moment, isn't it? Because it's just like, well, you have women that have gone after their career and they've been really committed to the whole girl boss thing. And to be competitive in those environments and to survive in those environments, what tends to happen is you have to adopt masculine traits because a lot of time you're in male dominant environments. And then what happens is it doesn't really get left at work. So you come back into your private life, your relationship, and then the polarity's off. And there's frustration with women because they're like, well, I've gone and done all these things that society is telling me to do, but the man that can choose is not choosing those women. You know, genuinely speaking, I don't see it happening. He's choosing the one is more in the feminine.
The only thing that I have with this is I know a lot of very pretty girls, and it's kind of interesting to me when I've been speaking to them about dating and stuff. A lot of the time, the most beautiful girl, like if I was looking at it like objectively, that you think all the men would be after, gets the least amount of attention.
And that might be because of the men are putting her on a pedestal.
Okay. So what advice would you give to a woman that doesn't know what she's doing wrong but is in that position?
Context needs to be looked at, right? If she's out with the girls, it'd be quite daunting to see a group of girls for a guy. Like a guy's looking at a situation, go, okay, she's attractive. What's the play? Like, how am I going to get a moment with that girl? You have to be a bit conscious about creating an opening for the guy to interact. And that might be just going to the bar for a moment, maybe signaling some eye contact or something, just throwing out a signal so the guy can go, is it or isn't it? And then for him to have the opportunity to find out if it is, maybe just go to the bar on your own. Or when all the girls are leaving, pretend you've dropped something in, the handkerchief on the floor sort of scenario. If you can create those ins to make it a little bit easier for the guy to start an interaction, then you could see a difference there. But do consider that a woman is super beautiful. Men find that daunting, so they'll go for the psychology is crazy. So they'll go for perhaps the woman that he sees as less attractive because in his head, he's like, well, if she says no, it's okay to get a no from her, but it's not okay to get a no from the one I actually want. It's bonkers. It's bonkers, but that's what's going on. We just did a documentary that came out, and one of the things I say, I go, guys, you're going to have to play this little trick on your head. And this is very valid to what you're saying here. You have to play this little psychological trick in your head. When you see a woman, and I don't like giving women numbers, but I do this exercise so men can actually start to create action. But when you see a woman and you think, wow, she is a lot of things on the visual list that I find attractive. She's not a 10. If you label her a 10, it's incredibly difficult for a woman to find a man attractive that sees himself beneath her. So that's what's happening. So you see a beautiful woman, you go, oh my God, she's a 10. You've basically told yourself she's reserved for people that are not me. So in that instance, when you see that happening, you go, she's a 5. She's a 5. And she's a 5 because you know nothing about her. She might be just walking around with this pretty privilege and just not really worked on herself and, have much intellect or any level of intellect that can stimulate you. So it doesn't really make sense you elevate her and celebritize her in that moment. So if you just call her a 5 in your head, then it becomes, well, let me just go over and find out if she's anything more. So now you're actually in a bit more control of your emotions, your reaction, and maybe can actually create some dialogue. That's some advice there if you're sort of dumbfounded by, how beautiful a woman is.
How do you feel about nowadays that women have to basically make the full-on moves at the start and men are doing less?
Yeah, well, let me ask you, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about you seeing a guy and then your story is you approached him and then that's what got you together? Does that take away from the experience you wanted your story to start with?
No, to be fair, no. If I really thought somebody was attractive, I'd probably look at them. But if they didn't come up, I wouldn't.
I'm glad you said that. So if guys are listening, that is a cue that she might be interested. And that's bloody confusing for guys. I don't know, maybe she just looked at me. No, dude, she's given the signal.
But then there's also like a thing of like looking too intensely too. Like I always find that like I don't really look at people very much, right? So I might give like a small little glance and I'm like, oh my God, he definitely knows that I'm staring at him. But that was the glance, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like I feel like nowadays you literally have to be like, and
even still, the guy is just like, she's just looking at me. That's it. Or she's looking at the guy behind. Like, yeah, it's still a thing. Like it's yeah. So I'm glad you did say that, and maybe some guys that are listening can take more action when there's a social cue being sent over the room. Back to your question, like what yeah, how do I feel about women taking action? At the end of the day, we just need to create the bridge, the starting point of the conversation. I personally have had it done to me, and I respected it, but yeah, something didn't really land for me in terms of how the way I like to move.
Do you think men and women fall in love differently?
I think what we know about women is, after sex, they're very quick to attach. Men takes a longer time. I would say that I think that men take about 4 months to start feeling some sort of attachment. You may get men that start mentioning that they're in love with you and all this stuff at the beginning. They're just trying to control the situation, make sure they're trying to rush to certainty quite quickly so they can control their emotions, all that kind of stuff. It's always the same for me. Like, it would just hit me like I've come up on a pill or something, like, whoa, what the? All right, baby, I'm there. Like I'm in this now. I really feel like.
What do you think that is? Like, if nothing really changes, but you're just hanging out, is it just the quality time of being spent with that person?
Yeah, and the familiarity of each other after a while, the shared experiences and consistency of each other. Someone becomes your person.
What's maybe the biggest misconception you think people have with dating nowadays?
Well, as we touched on earlier, is that I need to go out there and do this dating thing. I need to get a date, not looking at their lifestyle. Like, you got to fix your lifestyle, and meeting someone will be the byproduct of that. That's really it. If you've set up your lifestyle where you've got a continuous sort of culture calendar going on, you don't necessarily have to live in a major city, but do consider where you are. Look at the population of your city or your town, and then realize that there is a small percentage, a small cohort within that population that is your market.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you, Yaz. It's been good fun.